Have you ever felt like God skipped over you? Like no matter how much you pray, obey, or hold on to your faith, the silence only gets louder. You look around and others seem to rise, doors open for them, breakthroughs happen, but for you, nothing moves. And somewhere inside, a quiet question starts to echo. Did God forget about me? Let me tell you something. This message is not for the masses. It's not for the crowd, or the stage chasers, or the ones chasing applause. It's for you, the one who feels hidden, the one who's been misunderstood, the one carrying a pain no one sees, the one whose waiting room feels endless, but whose spirit refuses to give up. If you're watching this, it's not an accident. Heaven handpicked this moment to reveal something the world was never supposed to understand. God does not choose the ones the world celebrates. He raises the ones he hides first. He doesn't anoint what's trending. He anoints what's trusted. In the silence, in the shadows, in the places where no one claps, no one sees, no one validates. And maybe that's exactly where you are right now. But what if I told you that the silence wasn't rejection, it was recruitment? That the pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation. That the delay wasn't denial, it was divine design. Because God doesn't choose based on charisma, popularity, or status. He chooses based on essence. And essence is only revealed in the dark. If you're here, it's because heaven is about to unveil why your story was never supposed to look like theirs. But first, comment 99 below. Because biblically, 99 means the shepherd is searching for the one. And maybe that one is you. If you haven't already, hit the like button so this word reaches more chosen ones. And subscribe, because what's coming next is going to change how you see everything. Let's begin. You think you've been forgotten, but heaven whispers, you've been hidden. There is a mystery in the way God moves, a divine strategy that never aligns with human logic. Before he presents, he conceals. Before he lifts, he isolates. Before he anoints, he erases you from the eyes of men, not to punish you, but to preserve you. Because what is sacred must be sealed, and what carries glory must first learn to live without needing recognition. You see, the great ones, the true chosen, are never born on stages. They are born in deserts, in caves, in confusion, in seasons of silence so thick it feels like God has vanished. But he hasn't. He's just preparing the kind of vessel that can carry weight without cracking under pressure. And that kind of vessel can't be built in public. That kind of strength can only be forged in the unseen. So if you felt like heaven muted your name, like your gifts are gathering dust, like your destiny is stuck in a divine pause, listen carefully. You're not behind. You're being processed. He's stripping away every identity you borrowed from the world, every false label, every dependency on applause, every addiction to being seen. Why? Because if he revealed you too early, you'd perform for people instead of living from purpose. Before God lets you be recognized, he makes sure you're no longer needing it, and so he hides you. He tucks you away in seasons that seem to stretch beyond reason. He lets people forget your name. He lets opportunities pass you by. He lets the spotlight move to someone else. So he can ask you the question that no audience can answer for you. Who are you when no one's watching? Not who you pretend to be. Not who others think you are. Not the version of you that performs well on social media, but the raw, unfiltered you, the essence that survives rejection, silence, and isolation. Because that's what God chooses, not your charm, not your resume, not your charisma. He chooses your truth, and truth can only be proven in the dark. So yes, this waiting has purpose. Yes, this isolation is divine. Yes, the silence is sacred, because the longer he hides you, the deeper he's digging the foundation, and the deeper the foundation, the higher the future structure. You may feel buried, but you're actually being planted. And when that season ends, when God finally says now, you won't have to beg to be seen. The world will witness what the wilderness was hiding. But not yet. Because before God shows you to the world, He must first make sure you no longer belong to it. And that chosen one is where we go next. Don't blink. You didn't imagine it. You didn't invent this feeling. You've felt it deep in your bones, long before you had words for it. That strange sense that you're different, like you've always been out of sync with the world around you, like your soul came from somewhere else, and it remembers something this world forgot. It's not a personality trait. It's not anxiety. It's not overthinking. It's a mark, an invisible signature from heaven that says, "This one is mine." And the moment that mark was placed on you, your life changed, even if you didn't realize it. You started walking through doors others never had to open. You faced battles no one around you could see. You felt burdens in rooms that felt light to everyone else. You were marked, but not yet awakened. That's why you were never comfortable in the crowd. That's why parties felt hollow. Why small talk drained you. Why surface-level living never satisfied you. You weren't made for noise. You were built for depth. And the mark made sure you'd never forget that. But here's the secret no one tells you. The mark doesn't show up with glory. It shows up with pressure, with emotional heaviness, with spiritual warfare, with patterns of pain that seem to have no explanation. You carry wounds others never get. You cry tears no one understands. You see things, feel things, before they happen. And often, you suffer in silence. But you are not crazy. You are not too much. You are branded with something eternal. This mark doesn't bring attention, it brings friction. It's the reason you've been rejected from groups you tried to belong to. The reason doors closed in your face, even when you were qualified. The reason your spirit aches when others feel at peace. Because this world doesn't recognize what heaven has sealed. You are not here to chase success. You are here to fulfill assignment. That's why nothing temporary can fulfill you. That's why achievements feel empty. Because your soul isn't looking for applause, it's looking for alignment. And the mark ensures that. It will frustrate your plans, sabotage your shortcuts, wreck your comfort zones, until all that's left is the raw version of you God intended all along. It's not punishment, it's preservation. Because a chosen one cannot afford to be casual. The weight on your life requires your full surrender. And if you've wondered why your warfare seems more intense, why your dreams are more vivid, why your spirit feels older than your age, now you know. The mark didn't come to entertain you. It came to assign you. It doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger, sharper, more aware. Because heaven doesn't just place the mark, it activates it, right before everything is about to shift. And if you've been feeling it intensify lately, the urgency, the pressure, the pull towards something greater, it's not random, it's the signal. Something in the spirit world is moving, and the ones who carry the invisible seal are about to be called forward. Stay alert, because in the next block, you'll understand why the waiting has felt so painful, and why your timeline has never matched the crowd. What's coming will reframe your entire perception of delay. Don't miss it. Let's be honest. Waiting hurts. Not because we're impatient, but because we know there's more. You can feel it. It burns inside your chest, a deep awareness that something bigger has been written over your life. But it hasn't shown up yet. And the hardest part? Watching others move forward, while you're still stuck. But what if I told you, you're not stuck, you're still in the hands of a God who's not operating on your clock, but on your character. God doesn't measure time in hours or days. He measures it in alignment, in maturity, in obedience, in depth. That's why it feels like you're being held back, because you're not just being prepared for a moment, you're being built to carry weight, and weight requires structure. Think about it. Would you rather stand on a platform that was rushed and unstable, or one that was carved in silence, deep and unshakable? The throne is ready, but heaven is still working in you. Because if God gave it to you now, you'd carry the crown with cracked hands. You'd bring old habits into new territory. You'd sabotage what you were meant to steward. So he waits, not because he's uncertain about you, but because he's making sure you're certain about him, even when he's silent. This is where many fall. In the waiting, the enemy starts whispering, if it was real, it would have happened by now. If God cared, he'd move faster. If you were truly chosen, you wouldn't be stuck in this cycle. Lies, every one of them. Delay is not denial. Postponement is not punishment. What you call delay, heaven calls depth. And the deeper the calling, the longer the carving. That's why your process has felt longer than others, because your purpose is heavier. Anyone can be elevated quickly, but only a few are trusted to be anchored. And if you're wondering why the same doors haven't opened for you, it's because your door is being custom built. God doesn't hand chosen ones generic assignments. He crafts unique stages, divine intersections, and moments so precise, you'll know it couldn't have come from man. But here's the catch. You won't walk into that moment if you give up one step before the timing shifts. What if today's silence was tomorrow's stage being finished behind the scenes? What if the reason God hasn't moved is because he's synchronizing people, places, and divine appointments so that when it does happen, everything aligns in one supernatural moment? You're not waiting for nothing. You're waiting for something the world isn't ready to see yet. And maybe, just maybe, it's not time for you to rise, because he's still humbling the ones who will watch you rise. Let that sink in, because what's coming next is going to explain why the spiritual silence has been louder than ever. There's something God hasn't told you yet, and in the next block, you're going to find out why. Chosen ones don't move like everyone else. They walk by an inner compass that often points in directions that make absolutely no sense. Not to their friends, not to their family, not even to themselves. They say yes to paths no one would choose. They abandon logic. They surrender opportunities. They give up comfort just to follow a whisper. And the world calls them crazy. But heaven calls them ready. Because the greatest currency in the kingdom of God is obedience. Not blind obedience, not religious obedience, but prophetic obedience, the kind that moves when nothing makes sense, the kind that builds arcs in the middle of droughts, the kind that leaves everything behind without a destination in sight. The kind that says, "Let it be done unto me," when the whole world would scream, "This is impossible." Chosen ones aren't obedient because they know everything. They're obedient because they trust someone greater. And that trust is their superpower. Because here's the secret. God doesn't show the full map. He only gives the next step. And most people won't take it unless they see the reward. But chosen ones take the step anyway. Not because they're fearless, but because they've learned something sacred. God's silence doesn't mean absence, and his delays don't mean denial. Even when heaven is quiet, the chosen still move. Even when the instructions seem reckless, they go. Even when their hearts break with uncertainty, they obey. That's what separates the called from the truly chosen. The called want clarity. The chosen want alignment. And this kind of obedience costs you something. It costs reputation, because people won't understand your decisions. It costs comfort, because God rarely calls you to what's easy. It costs logic, because his ways are higher, not always clearer. But what it produces is supernatural access. Doors open that no one saw coming. Favor flows where there was only drought. Provision shows up on the second step, not the first, because it was obedience that activated it. God doesn't need your understanding. He needs your yes. And the ones he trusts with the most are the ones who follow his voice even when it's trembling, even when the cost is high, even when they have to walk alone, even when they're unsure, but available. Because the most dangerous weapon in the hands of heaven is a soul who obeys without negotiation. And if you've been sensing instructions lately that don't make sense, if you've been prompted to walk away from things that look good on paper, if you've felt a shift, a nudge, a divine discomfort pushing you to move, that's not random. That's the mark of your next level. And in the next section, you'll understand why things started falling apart, right when you finally felt aligned. Something bigger is happening behind the chaos. Don't move. What's next will explain everything. Everything was finally aligning. You were praying more, hearing God more clearly, feeling more in sync with your purpose than ever before. And then, suddenly, all hell broke loose. Doors slammed shut. People you trusted turned cold. Opportunities vanished. Attacks came from directions you never saw coming. And just like that, the peace you had was swallowed by chaos. But listen closely. This isn't failure. This isn't divine abandonment. This is spiritual confirmation. In the kingdom of God, the fiercest warfare doesn't come when you're off track. It comes when you're on target. Because darkness can sense it. The moment your spirit starts aligning with destiny, the moment heaven begins preparing your release, the enemy detects movement in the unseen, and he launches everything he's got. But not because you're doing something wrong. No, because you've become dangerous. Dangerous to systems, dangerous to cycles, dangerous to generational curses, dangerous to the spiritual powers that have kept people bound for years. Your obedience is lethal. Your surrender is a threat. Your very existence, aligned with heaven, shakes the kingdom of darkness. And so the attacks increase, not because God forgot you, but because he's about to announce you. Look at Joseph. Just days before becoming governor of Egypt, he was locked in a prison cell, forgotten, betrayed, silenced. Look at David. After being anointed as king, he didn't step into a palace. He stepped into a battlefield, hunted by a jealous Saul. And Jesus, moments before resurrection, he was bleeding in Gethsemane, betrayed by a friend, crucified by the very ones he came to save. What's the pattern? The greatest elevations are always preceded by the greatest breakdowns, because before the crown comes the crushing, not to destroy you, but to make sure pride doesn't follow you into the throne room. God allows the heat to rise, not to burn you, but to reveal what's indestructible in you. So if you've been walking through fire, if the pressure feels unbearable, if you've cried silent tears that no one knows about, then heaven has one message for you. You're close. Closer than you think. Closer than your feelings suggest. Closer than the enemy wants you to realize. And that's why everything is hitting you at once. Because the enemy doesn't waste ammo on someone with no future. He only panics when a transition is near. So hold your ground, wipe your tears, and don't retreat. Because the very thing that feels like it's trying to destroy you is actually the final test before the release. And in the final block of this message, you're about to discover why your fight has been so relentless and what exactly God is about to do next. Get ready. The next revelation will break something open. You were not chosen because you were flawless. You were chosen because you survived, because you stayed when it hurt, because you obeyed in silence, because you cried in the dark and didn't give up. And now, heaven is speaking. It's time. That weight you've carried, it wasn't punishment. It was proof. Proof that you were being forged for something others wouldn't have survived. Proof that your pain was not random. Proof that your name has already been spoken in the courts of heaven. You didn't bleed for nothing. You didn't break for nothing. You didn't wait in vain. God saw you, and now he's raising you, not to be impressive, but to be impactful, not to entertain crowds, but to shift generations. You are not ordinary. You are a divine design, a walking altar, a living blueprint, a hidden weapon God is about to unveil in front